Okay. Hi everyone, this is SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com, and I'm here to analyze another game this week. This is a game I played as black, and again, I didn't win. I didn't lose either. Um, I was in control for most of this game, and I couldn't put it all together. You know, there's that old saying, there's nothing harder to win than a one position. And in this game, I was up a pawn, basically for move 3. My opponent offered a gambit. I successfully defended against it. I had an extra pawn, I had a good position, everything was going well, but I couldn't finish it off. So let's take a look. Let's analyze this. Let's see what I did right, and how it's possible to convert one of these games. Because there's few things more frustrating than playing, what is it, like 30 moves, 30 good moves, even 30 great moves, and then not winning because you couldn't find the right idea. So again, I was black. We'll look at it from white's perspective. That's fine. Opening is the Sicilian defense, and it's actually the Mora Gambit. I have a really good record against the Mora Gambit. Part of it, though, is just because usually it's lower-rated players who played against me. Like in this game, there's a 400 rating point difference, and I can't finish it off. Anyway, take. So in exchange, white's got open lines. He's got development. It's a really good gambit, honestly. It's just, and you'll really learn attacking chess if you play it. That said, I will do what I normally do, is I develop my knights, and I put my pawns here and here. I don't bother fianchettoing. I think white really likes attacking the fianchetto. I just put my pawns here, so I blunt his pieces. Eventually, I'm going to play e5 or d5, and I'm okay. Historically, that's the way it's usually worked. After knight c6, knight f3, I play d6. So again, I'm controlling this square. My opponent then plays e5, which isn't the best move. And I got scared a little bit here. No, well, maybe not scared. It's, excuse me, I didn't take the pawn. And that mystifies me a little bit now that I look at it, because if I were to take the pawn, say, what does he do? Does he exchange queens? That has to be the idea, right? Well, after take, we take with the king, obviously, to keep the pawn. What does white have? He's actually down 2 pawns, and there's no guarantee he's going to win this pawn back. I was a little bit worried about knight g5 ideas, where he attacks f7, but after knight h6, isn't white just down 2 pawns? That's what it looks like to me. If he doesn't exchange queens, I will exchange queens for him. Maybe he does something like queen a5, trying to pin the knight, and we always have bishop d7 at the very least, maybe queen a5. Bottom line is that black in this position is down 2 pawns, and even if he wins back one of them, he's down a pawn. He doesn't have a center anymore. He doesn't have anything. Nonetheless, I didn't take it. I played much more solidly. I played e6. And now if black takes, I can take with the queen or the bishop. I develop a piece. He loses his pawn. Things are great. Instead, he played bishop b5, and then I was able to play d5. I was able to close the center up. There's some good things, there's some bad things about this. The good things are that it's very hard for white to attack now. And it is. We'll see that why later in the game. In this French defense structure, it's these 2 pawns. It's very, very solid. Very hard to break through. How would white break through? There has to be a piece sacrifice, but that doesn't seem to work very well. Maybe you get, f4, f5, try to open things up. That's going to take at least 3 moves. You want a castle in the meantime. It's very, very solid. And perhaps white can play bishop back to d3 and try to launch an attack on the king side this way, but then he's wasting time, and he's already down a pawn. So this is the good thing. Right here, I'm not worried at all. I basically thought that, I'm not going to lose by checkmate in this game. The downside, of course, is that this is a French defense structure, and if you know me, you know that the French defense is the scourge upon the chess earth. And this bishop really suffers And we'll actually see that in the game. The reason I lose this, I don't lose the game. The reason I don't win is because of this bishop. And we'll see that later on. For now, we can just notice that it has one legal square, and it's blocked by its own pawns. White continued bishop f4, and we'll see something actually similar. Is one problem for white is he's played a gambit, he wants to attack, and he's got a pawn on e5. Because there's a pawn here, he can't put a piece here, like by definition. He would love to have a knight on e5. Or if this pawn weren't there, this bishop would then be staring all the way down through this diagonal. A queen could never come to c7, for instance. And there's possibilities there. With the pawn there, it's really restricting white. We'll actually see that if we just look ahead 2 moves, where after I brought my knight out, he castled, I bring my knight here, I attack his bishop, and he moves back. And we just look at this. This bishop is stuck staring at its own pawn. It's doing nothing. It's not a very good bishop. It's outside the pawn chain. There are no pawn chains for white. It's not doing anything. Okay, my bishop's bad. His bishop isn't doing anything. How can this bishop help in an attack? It can't. My knight is also pressuring the pawn here, so it's a pretty good knight. This knight's pressuring, even though it's pinned. So white has to watch this pawn. It's potentially weak. And so white cannot put a piece in the center where he'd like, and his pieces have to defend the pawn that he wished wasn't there. So this quite a few downsides. Anyway, it's fine. It's still a position. Bishop e7. White continues normal. What is this? The Sicilian? More a gambit. I castle. Rook. Bishop. Rook. So far, so good. All right. So the opening is now fully completed here. Now here, I played a move which I was quite happy with, though the computer suggests it's quite poor. I played bishop h4. Let's just back up for a second. What does black want in this position? What do I want? I'm up a pawn, so in a perfect world, I trade all the pieces, I trade the queens, and I win the endgame. This pawn is also a protected pass pawn, so trading is going to work very, very well in my favor. I have a very solid position, but it's also quite cramped. All right, this knight actually, I mean, it's okay, but it has actually no squares. If it were to be attacked, it can only go to h1. It would like to drop back to e7, but there's a bishop there. And where do I move the bishop? Move it here, or the knight can just move. Here? Is that a good square? The bishop doesn't seem to do anything. I want to trade the bishop. And I was thinking, by playing bishop h4, that I wanted black to play knight takes h4, knight takes h4, and then my next move, I bring it back here to f5. Because then, this bishop is quite poor. My knight is on a beautiful square. I can always draw it back to e7 if it wants to. It's controlling d4. It's fantastic. It's true that I have some dark square weaknesses here, but if this bishop is stuck over here, it can't really do anything. And if he exchanges, if he just takes the knight, take, then I have successfully traded 2 pieces. I'm that much closer to my endgame. White can't even dream about an attack. There's nothing even remotely near my king. Nothing. So I thought I was doing quite well. Unfortunately, white has one move, bishop d3, which is the move I missed. And what this does is, well, A, the bishop is aiming at the king side, and now the knight, it actually can't come to the f5 square. If I try and do that, well, he's just going to take it, and now d5 falls. Now, white's won back his pawn. I've got a weak pawn, and white's got a beautiful. White's better here. White's doing incredible. And if I can't play knight f5 instead, maybe I might do something like this. I gotta bring my knight back. And the computer suggests we can even try and keep hitting the knight. h4, push it back some more. Because even if my knight comes to e7, it can't come to f5 as long as the bishop's here. And white's got a bit more play. White's got a lot more play. He's already starting some stuff on the king side now. So, I missed that. That was it. Fortunately, I suppose. What should I have done instead? That's always the question. And the computer suggests a move that I was looking at, but I thought it was a little too much. h5. And the idea of h5, well, is to play h4 and trap the bishop. And something like this would happen. Now the computer suggests bishop to g5. Okay. Attacks the rook. And we'll get a position sort of like this. And we'll notice that black has much more space here on the king side. And this bishop, again, is now staring at its own pawn. It's practically out of the game. All it is doing is protecting this pawn. Notice how I can now bring a knight, say, to f4 instead of to f5. The knight can come to here, or the bishop can come to here. I gotta watch this pawn a little bit, but black's got a lot more space, and white, again, can't dream of an attack. So that would be a very ambitious way of playing. Alternatively, I could just play completely normal moves. I could play along the lines of a6, rook c8, bring my queen somewhere, maybe to c7 or to b6, bring this rook over, and just challenge here on the queen side. So I explain, start expanding as if it were a normal French defense. Those are some of the possibilities. Anyway, I played bishop h4. My opponent didn't take. He just brought his bishop back to d3. I exchanged. He exchanged. Now I play f6, which may have been premature. The computer says it's okay, but again, I can play normal moves first. White doesn't really have an attack. What can white do? He's got nothing. And if white has no attack, that means I have time. And if I have time, I can do anything. So I can play, queen a5, bring my queen out. What's it doing? It's allowing my rook to slide over, maybe this rook to slide over, or maybe I can double, right? And I can do stuff here on the queen side. And if black has nothing to worry about on the king side, I can take my time. Maybe later I play f6. But as soon as I do play f6, that gives him the square. We'll see that, actually. After f6, he took. Whoops, sorry. Sure, take. Why not? We'll just look at these exchanges. And now there's this beautiful square for his knight. If he could plop a knight there and keep it there, right now I would just take it. But if he could get a knight here, he's doing amazing. And even there, even the exchange, actually, would be quite interesting. Just abstractly here, I'm not saying this is the best play, where it's good knight versus bad bishop. I'm up a pawn, so that's still good, but white has definite ideas here. If he can rearrange the knight here like this, he's attacking the pawn, my bishop is stuck completely passive, his knight would be beautiful. He's doing all right. He's doing much more than all right. Now, I've got some counterplay on the f-file, and that could be quite important. And at the same time, at any point, I could give up a pawn and still have equal material. This is still a passed pawn. So even if white were to win this pawn, and he takes with his knight, so let's just do a phantom fantasy variation. Okay, but just imagine something. I gotta move my queen somewhere. I don't even know. So, anyway, he's able to win the pawn. Just imagine I can't take his queen. I still have a passed d-pawn. Material is still equal, and I can use that time. So perhaps that wasn't the absolute best way I could explain it, but by being up a pawn, I can always give a pawn back. That's always a thought I have in my head. Anyway, he played knight d4, which is very similar to what we're going to see. I play queen f6, where again I'm pressuring the f2 pawn, and after take, it's good knight versus bad bishop. And if this knight can come to either this square or this square, it's easier to get to d4. You can go b5 to here or here to here. It doesn't matter. If he can get to here, he's doing great. If he can get to here, he's doing even better. And the idea is just keep this bishop under wraps, and then I can't do anything. Or this bishop can't do anything. And I have to somehow win with my extra pawn, but with a piece doing nothing. And that's very hard. It's very hard to do that. And in fact, that's my problem, is even though I'm up a pawn, it's extremely difficult for me to actually use it. And we'll see in the game. Again, the computer likes all my moves up to here. He plays queen d2, allowing the knight to come to e2 and then d4 potentially. I bring my rook over, eyeing the queen. And now here, he just starts to double on the his open file. So he goes here, I advance the pawn, He starts doubling. I protect. He doubles. And this is the problem. This is the position where I didn't know what to do. You see, the problem here is that it's not enough just to say what is the correct move in this position. Is we need the correct plan. We need the correct idea. How does black make progress? Because, for instance, white, he's down a pawn. He doesn't have to do anything. He could just like move his king, you know, back and forth, and he's happy. What does black do? How do I break through? And it's hard. I have two center pawns. They're very strong. They're protected by all of my pieces. My pieces are on very good squares. My bishop would like it if this pawn were to, say, be anywhere else, perhaps on f5 instead, because then it would have a nice, big, happy diagonal. But it's hard to think of better spots to put any of my pieces. However, my pieces, though they're protecting my pawns, that's all they're doing. And there are no other weaknesses for me to attack. I mean, okay, the g3 pawn is weak, but it's defended. How do I attack it? How do I go forward? How do I actually win this game? I thought for a very long time, and honestly, I came with nothing. And part of the problem, ironically, is that I'm a stronger player now. If this were me even, let's say 10 years ago, you know, a decade ago, I'd have probably played e4 without thinking too much. With the idea simply that he has his two rooks attacking my pawn, so I'm going to stop it. Oops. Like that. Simple. That's literally it. That would be my thought process. As I've become stronger, I look at this and I think, ugh. I almost rejected on sight. In fact, that's exactly what I did. I rejected it because it's putting two more pawns on light squares, and all this knight needs to do is land on d4, and I don't know if white's better, but it's a classic good knight, bad bishop, center pawn's completely locked. I would have no progress at all. White is at least drawn. At least. Maybe he can impress for more. Maybe he can try and undermine my pawns with f3. Or he can gang up on the pawn. Maybe he can do an exchange at the appropriate time. White would have all the time. If he wants to draw, I can get it virtually whenever he wants. So when I looked at this, when I'm looking at e4, I just said, that's bad. Can't do it. The one I didn't realize, because I dismissed the move so quickly, is that it's actually not easy to get this knight to d4 by itself, right? I mean, how does it get there? It would have to either come via e2, so something like this, or like this, right? I mapped that out earlier. Right now, he doesn't even control b4, so that's impossible. And even if he did, I could exchange it. I'd be happy to exchange bishop for knight, because then it's no longer good knight versus bad bishop. It's simply rooks and queens. I have an extra pawn. I can hopefully do something. So that one doesn't make sense. What about e2? Well, right now there's a rook on e2. And where would the rook move to? It would have to move to e3. And notice how that would just run into a d4 fork, right? I would really much like it if he played that. There's no tactics here or anything, right? It's not like he just loses the pawn and tack. It's fine. There's nothing to worry about. So if he can't get his knight to d4, then what's going to happen is sooner, and he can't blockade it, and it's actually hard for him to rearrange these the rooks, right? I mean, if he moves one rook away, like, it's going to take time. And in that time, I'm going to be able to overprotect this pawn. Let me do like this. I'll protect this pawn, and then I'll play this. If I can play that, this pawn's closer to queening, and now this bishop's coming alive. It's protecting this pawn, and I can push it one more square, and then I think I'm winning pretty easily at that point. I don't think there'd be any more wavering from me. Excuse me, I got a little cough. That's kind of annoying. But that's it. That's what I didn't see. Is I saw this structure, and I saw his knight here. I know the knight only needs two moves, e2, d4, and I can't win. And what I didn't look deep enough. I mean, again, I rejected it on principle. If I would have looked, I would have said, oh, it's actually not easy for the knight to get there. And if the knight can't get there, then eventually I will push. And then I will either do this, or I'll do this, or I'll rearrange my forces, and my center pawns are coming. That's how black should win this game. I didn't do that. I thought again, this is a correspondence game, so I had 3 days to think, right? And I thought off and on for most of those 3 days. I didn't know what to do, so I just played b6. So that way my bishop could drop back, maybe go over to a6. And honestly, I'm hoping my opponent just does something silly, makes a blunder, and then I can take advantage of it. He plays b4, which is along the lines of what I want. If he advances pawns randomly, then I can attack them. So that's what I sort of do. Queen d6, a3, and again, I gotta think of a move. And I now realize that if I bring my bishop back, it's no longer defending this rook, and that makes some tactics like f4. All of a sudden, I'm not so sure about this. Because, you know, I can't take, I lose on e8. I don't want to play e4, even though that's the best move. So, I don't really want to do that, and I gotta think of a move. I can't delay any longer. I played the opposite move. I played d4. With the idea that he goes here, I take, and then we reach this position. And already this position is, it's not worse for black, but again, it's worse than what it could have been. It's very hard for me to, again, to advance meaningfully in this position. The problem is this pawn is always weak. It's forever weak, and he's ganging up on it, and he's got an easy way to keep attacking. He can bring his queen here or here. He can play f4. If this pawn ever drops or moves, then this pawn is weak. And also there is tactics, again, potentially on e8. Very hard for white to win. The computer says, sorry, for black to win. The computer says that perhaps black has a possibility, but it's far from obvious. Now my whole idea, the best that I could come up with was I'm going to play rook c8. I'm going to come down to here, double up, maybe triple up, and attack on the queen side. Now, will white win a pawn? Yes. But again, I'm already up a pawn. So I'm thinking I can sacrifice a pawn, or give a pawn back, in order to get play. So that way, instead of just defending my pawns, I can attack. Because if I can attack this pawn, and I win it, then I win this pawn. These 2 pawns are much easier to queen. Maybe not. In fact, not. I was looking at phantoms. I had no idea what to do. This is the best idea. And it's quite poor, in fact. Because after f4, I keep going with rook c3. And now he takes the pawn. And after the following little exchange, we can see that his rook is behind his pawn, and there's nothing stopping it. And the only move for black here is, and all of a sudden, I'm on the back foot. I've had to retreat. This pawn is closer to queening. I could be in trouble. In fact, we'll see why in a second. Just backing up. The one chance that I had, which I didn't consider, the computer had to point out to me, I was kind of off form here. Once I couldn't see what to do, I'm essentially playing randomly. Anyway, the best shot would be to play d3, with the idea that instead of bringing my rook to c3, is I'd bring the rook all the way down to d2. So it's on the 7th rank, or the 6th rank, whatever you want, okay? And the computer points out that after something like this, rook comes over, he can do a check, and then he comes in. At this point, the game is the game's a draw. It's going to be a draw. This whole queen a2 to f7 is the best defense, and the reason for that is you'll notice that the back rank is very weak, and white just wants to play rook e8 with check, 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 and eventually mate, right? And so how do we defend that? You bring the queen over, and now the queen is X-raying through. But then there's take, take. And this is a draw. The computer says black has like a 0.1 advantage, but no, this is nothing. Look at the pawn structure. It's terrible. This pawn gives white a little bit of problems, but it's nothing too special. Even if white were to win a pawn, or if black were to win a pawn, because this is a rook endgame with pawn weaknesses, incredibly difficult to win. Incredibly difficult. And I wouldn't even try in this position, right? That was the best shot, though, this d3 idea. Instead, again, we saw this. He took. Backing up, taking with a pawn may have been even stronger because your two rooks are you're threatening this pawn, and I gotta move my queen. Oh geez, maybe just win a pawn. And this pawn's closer. Your rooks are coordinated. My rooks aren't coordinated. By exchanging rooks, now he's lost the advantage of the extra coordination. I play queen d5 because I want to make sure I protect my d pawn. He pushes. I'm forced to bring my rook back. Queen f4, and now it's actually incredible. If we go back 5 moves, right here, okay, I didn't find the right idea with e4 right away, but here black is completely fine. And now we come here. What is this? 6, 7 moves, and all of a sudden, white has winning ideas. What happens if the most obvious move to me in this position was rook f8, and I was very nearly going to play it. I looked at the position, I thought about 10 seconds, and I said, okay, I'm probably going to play rook f8. And sometimes, when I'm playing games, especially against lower-rated players, I just do that. Fortunately, I didn't, because I then realized, holy crap, white can play e7. And I'm completely busted in this position. If I take his queen, well, he's going to take back. I can't stop the e-pawn from queen next. I don't even have a check. I've got nothing. I'm simply down a rook. I've lost. If I bring my rook over to defend the pawn, notice I just lost about 4 tempi, moving my rook over and then back, then over, then back. That's holy crap, right? After rook f1, white has a winning attack where he wants to invade down here. So if black does nothing, right? He just comes down with check, and that's mate. If I try and defend that, maybe I go to, I don't know, where's the queen move? Oh, sorry, so the computer suggests that queen f5 is the best move, which obviously just throws the queen away. Maybe I go back here on the long diagonal so that I have extra protection. Well, then he pushes the king away, and we mate this way. So there is horrendous problems for me in this position. And in fact, there's the only defense is, well, actually, here. The other problem I have is if I don't, let's say I don't move my rook. Maybe I do something else. Maybe I play a6 here. All right. He would play queen f7. King goes back. Queen comes to d7. And now we can see quite clearly that if I were to simply exchange, I've simply lost. Quite a very similar variation. So I can't exchange. But if I don't exchange, well, the computer suggests this is the best idea. That's fine. Pushes the pawn. What do? Okay, I stop the pawn. Rook f1, and it's the exact same idea. He's going to invade down here, and what do? Take with check. That's always nice. Check, and that's game. The back rank is too weak. And so, in fact, the only defense I have is to play h6 in this position. That's it. So that way now, if he invades the queen, I've got king h7. And now he doesn't have all these back rank tactics. Now, white is still, I think white is more likely to win this position. It's a draw. Computer says it's a dead draw, and it seems true, right? But black is much more likely, it's me, I am more likely to make mistakes. It's just easier, right? Amazing what's happened. It's so hard to win a one game. From winning Up a pawn, up a healthy pawn. Computer says it's a +2 advantage to a +0.1 advantage to a 0.5 to here it's dead even. Equal. I got no chance. As it is, my opponent tried a different approach. He played Queen G4 with the idea if he wants to push the pawn on discover attack. That seems like a kind of a cheap threat. I push my own pawn. He pushes his. Rook comes over. He attacks my my rook. I defend it. Offers an exchange of queens. That's fine. Take, take. Push my pawn. And we reach. This is the end. This is where I offer to draw. And again, this is a rook endgame. Now, two things. One, I'm not super amazing at endgames. I'm arguably not even amazing. I'm arguably below average at endgames, especially compared to my rating. I need to study endgames quite hard. The thing is that rook endgames are incredibly drawish, and you need to have either the much more active rook, the much more active king, extra material, or clear weakness to attack. And usually you need at least two of those things. So often just being up a pawn isn't enough to win, or just having an active rook isn't enough to win. You need both. And in this position, do I have a weakness? Sure, this pawn's weak. Not easy to attack, though. Is my rook more active? No, rooks are both active. Is my king more active? No, kings are both active. Do I have an extra pawn? No. And even if I do win a pawn, maybe my rook can come over here, for instance. So I'm attacking this pawn, I'm attacking this pawn. Maybe I can win one of them one day. Very little chance I actually convert this. Because at the same time, white can always play something like this. If my king were to ever move, try to come advance, or he's forking pawns, it's a draw. Now, could Magnus Carlsen outplay me? Yeah. Could Stockfish outplay me? Probably. Right? But it's a draw. And it should be a draw. And so I offered a draw, he accepted it. And it's not amazing. Within a span of first 20 moves, I played near perfect. Okay, I had that one idea where I played my bishop to h4, which computer didn't like very much. But afterwards, it still said I had the advantage. And even up to here. Alright, I don't even know what to do. I'm doing well. I'm up a pawn. But I couldn't figure out what to do next. And that was it. Because my thought process, again, how do I get this bishop in the game? If I play e4, the bishop will never come into the game. Because I didn't see the idea of eventually playing d3. Sorry, d4. The idea, I dismissed it too quickly. Instead, I played this, in which I got rid of my bishop. I'm thinking, yay! But now, all my pieces are stuck defending pawns. He's got an easy blockade. I've got nothing. There's no way to advance further. So that's I'm not gonna lie, it's a frustrating game, and sometimes this happens. Sometimes you can play very well, and then you push too hard, and then here. This is actually, I mentioned in a different video, it's an example of you let your opponents beat themselves. That's how I got to 1800 rating, is I didn't really make mistakes. I didn't do anything special. I just waited for my opponent to implode. And I nearly did that in this game. I didn't know what to do. I thought I'm still better. Well, let's try rook c8. And then we'll see. Well, now I've got to retreat. And now, in this position, if I don't play h6, I lose. Right? In a span of 6 moves, I'm nearly losing. I put my position. That's how badly I've deteriorated my position, by pushing too hard and by pushing in the wrong direction. Nothing harder to win than a one game. So hey, congratulations again. I want to congratulate my opponent because played extremely well. I mean, it's so easy just to roll over. How many people just resign when against a higher rated player? Down a pawn, no attack. Oh, he's going to win effortlessly. It's hard. Right, I may be over 2,000, you know, on chess.com, but that doesn't make it easy. You know, sometimes I project a lot of confidence in these videos. Most of that confidence comes after the fact, after I'm able to analyze the game deeply, after I look at some computer variations that either show me new ideas or they'll confirm that my ideas are correct. yeah, then I'm confident, of course. But during the game, it's tough. Chess isn't an easy game, but that's what makes the victories feel so good. Anyway, so that's that. SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. Hope you found that helpful. Hope you found that useful. A glimpse into how I looked at this game. And I promised I'd share my analysis of my opponent, so here it is. Hope you found it useful. I don't know if that corroborates with what you thought, but there it is. And hopefully I'll have more videos coming up soon. I love feedback. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.